All right, so one of the keys to containing radicalism is to actually holding radical actors accountable. And in the wake of the insurrection, the Justice Department says that more than 820 people from nearly all 50 states have been arrested for their actions at the Capitol that day. At least 305 people have pled guilty. 6 have been convicted at trial. More than 80 have been sentenced to prison already. Joining me now is Dan Goldman, the former House Impeachment Inquiry Majority Counsel, the former Director of Investigations for the House Intel Committee, and the former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Daniel, it's good to see you again. So let's first look at how the Justice Department has held the insurrectionists to account. How do you think the federal government has done here? Have they done enough? This was obviously at the time of its launch, the largest investigation of its kind. We were thinking about 3,000 people that were there that day. And as I mentioned, you're looking at about 1,100 or so right now who are facing some kind of or have faced some kind of judicial proceedings.
It is a monumental undertaking for the Department of Justice to charge over 800 people. That's more than almost every U.S. attorney's office around the country charges in a single year. And even if the charges are similar to each other, each defendant has their due process rights, and each defendant has a defense lawyer and motion practice, and they are individual cases. So we can't underscore enough what a massive undertaking that is. And in many respects, it makes sense. I mean, these were the violent insurrectionists, and a number of them have been charged with seditious conspiracy, which is a remarkably serious charge. So they've done a fabulous job, I think, digging into what occurred on January 6th in a very swift and aggressive way. That is in somewhat contrast to how quickly they're moving on the broader investigation about the effort to overturn the election by Donald Trump and others in his orbit.
And the thing is, Daniel, this goes beyond just holding the insurrectionists to account when you look at the January 6 hearings and what the DOJ might do in the future, because this radicalization has been so mainstreamed. I think my question to you as a prosecutor is, how do we contain it in a prosecutorial sense? Do you go after everybody who finances it, everybody who publishes material, everybody who gets involved in committing a crime based on that ideology? How do you draw that line? Because what we do overseas when we're dealing with radicalization, obviously we don't have the same tools in the toolkit domestically.
We don't, but we do have enough tools. I think it is a little bit missing the mark to say that we don't have the tools to go after domestic violent extremists. Sure, we could beef up, especially sort of the material funding that we use for international terrorists, which would make very significant penalties for anyone who funds these domestic extremist groups. I think that would be an important addition to the criminal laws. But yes, the answer to me, and when I was a prosecutor, is we tried to go after the head. You know, if you cut off the head of the snake, then you really have killed everything on down the line. And so oftentimes you follow the money. That's why we hear that so much. And if you can figure out who's actually funding these groups, and you're able to include them in a conspiracy charge, which you would be able to do, presumably, then they really can't do much in any kind of an organized fashion. Maybe there are extraneous people who do one-off things, but as long as they're not organized and coordinated as they appear to have been on January 6th, then that you've really kind of neutered the power of the organization.
But beyond money, for example, how would you say we could respond in our society when so much of the culture that is exploited by extremists are rooted in things like free speech or zero gun regulation? It's one thing to say, I want to overthrow the government. You have the right to say that. But then when you get to the point of sitting around the table and actually hatching a plan and saying we're going to go there on January 6th to do that, it crosses a line, right?
Of course, yeah, it absolutely crosses a line. And, you know, I think that, as you point out, or at least insinuate, the free speech argument is a completely bogus argument. No one's trying to infringe on anyone's free speech. But of course, nobody has uninhibited speech. We don't yell fire in the movie theater for a reason. Hate speech can be criminalized. Threats are speech, but they are criminalized if there's an act in furtherance of those threats. And the same thing applies here. It's a broader problem, I think, that a prosecutor can't deal with on his or her own. This is a cultural phenomenon. And, what I'm excited about for the hearing tomorrow on January 6th is that I expect that we will get into a little bit about the role that Fox News and the right-wing ecosphere has played in inciting this white nationalist, domestic violent extremists push that has been going on around the country, and in part because they're shielding their viewers from the facts. What is so problematic right now, Eamon, I think, is that there are so many people in this country who are living in an alternative universe that is completely divorced from reality. And the challenge for all of us is to figure out a way to reach them. It's not going to be through the media they watch, so we're going to have to figure out another way.